Good evening. Everyone's recovered from the long break. So thank you for coming out tonight. Tonight is actually a night where we're at the start of a process. I know that the Edina school community has gone through a process around start and end times in the past. The board has asked to review it again this year. So we are starting out at the front end with inviting the community in to provide some of the insights that some of you carry related to start and end time. So I'm going to go through a really quick presentation, and then after that, we're going to open it up for you to address the school board related to start and end time. So it's really a hearing or listening session, whatever you want to call it, but the title is strictly on start and end time. So we want to focus on your insights and thoughts on start and end times. If you want to speak to the board, there's a sheet of paper, sign-up sheet. You don't have to put the topic, because obviously the topic is start and end times, but just to help the chair and myself make sure that people are heard and they come forward for their presentation. So I'm going to start by talking about a little bit about where we're at in the process. The school board process is, the board in this case works closely with myself, and I want to introduce David White and Margot Bauk. David is the transportation director, and Margot is the director of business services. And work closely with us in looking at all the variables that go into start and end times. The process really is for the board to establish start and end times that support student learning and creates efficiency in transportation. That is one of the jobs they have as a school board. And then at the same time, along with us, along with David, that has the knowledge behind all the variables that go into transportation: walk distance, choice programs, stops, ride times, optimum times to engage students, intra-district transfers, ridership, etc. There's so many different variables that play into a schedule that have an impact either on the efficiency of the transportation system or on the learning and engagement of students. The school board throughout this will be monitoring the decision-making process that really starts tonight with your opportunity to address the board related to start and end times. So they'll be monitoring this process along with me. Review and pose questions about different transportation scenarios. So that's another role that they play with regards to really posing the questions for us to look at transportation scenarios that fit student learning as well as fits the efficiency in transportation. So this is a proposed schedule. So we did presented some research on November 9th and a listening session on November 27th, that's tonight. And the current system efficiency and efficiency of recommended schedules, week of January 16th. So we're going to have a report to the board that talks about the efficiency of the current system. Then we're going to convene a task force, and that still remains to be seen how we do that yet. Whether it's the task force from last year, members of the task force from last year, and others, and begin to review what proposals make sense. And then there will be a recommendation for start times from the board, the task force, the administration, all working together to come up with a recommendation that seems to make sense. And then we would have another community input session on the recommended schedule or recommended schedules. So if there's one or two that are viable, we would have the community give some input on it, just asking the questions: what did we forget? What are some of the things we should think about as it relates to those schedules that are presented? And then the rest of the time is for the board to have work sessions on it, along with the administration, to talk about to fine-tune the decision-making and make sure that we have all the input necessary to make the decision. So this process, of course, I always say, is subject to change because it is a schedule. So, but at least it gives you a guide as far as where we're headed. There's also a question whether we implement it for 1819 or 1920. That has not been decided yet. So there's still a lot of work to be done and things to think through as we go through this process. So tonight is really asking all of you the question: what are we missing? What else should we pursue? What questions do you have regarding start and end times? We'll be cataloging the questions. So Susan Tennyson, Margot, myself will be cataloging questions and try to put those all into some sort of a document that we can respond to as we go through the evening. So, and then through the process between now and when the board makes the decision. So the thing we ask for tonight is really for everybody to get a chance to be heard. So as with anything else, just be respectful of everybody's time, and applause sometimes slows things down, and also if you want to, we're going to allow 3 minutes presentation. I'm going to have the chair Wallen Freeman go through the kind of what he expects with regards to your presentation, and then we probably will not be answering questions tonight because that takes up time. We just want to make sure everybody is heard and the board gets a chance to listen to what your thoughts are as we begin the process of start and end times. So, see, am I missing anything? I think the thing I'm going to have the chair read over the expectations you have around the presentations.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. We actually I don't have a list of expectations. We haven't had a listening session before, so we're kind of just seeing how it goes. We are going to follow some of the same rules we follow when people make public comments at a regular scheduled board meeting. So I'm going to ask that people keep their comments to 3 minutes. And by the way, what we're going to do is we'll run through every comment that people have. And if, for example, you say to yourself, well, I've got 6 minutes of material, go 3 minutes, stop, so we make sure we get through everybody, and then you can always come back later in the evening and say, I'd like to finish. But we just want to make sure everybody gets a chance to go through and provide their comments. We ask that you do not make any comments about individuals. So if you have comments about individuals, that those should be submitted to the superintendent and not in tonight's forum. As John said, we are not planning on answering questions tonight. We're going to catalog the questions. We'll probably create, an FAQ that will be available on the website so that everybody will have the answer to those questions. We have requested sign-up sheets just so we have some order to the evening. So if you have a sign-up sheet that has not been given to me, you can. All right. And once we've gone through the sign-up sheet, yep, that would be great.
Does this work? Well, no, I just want to make sure it was actually.
I think we're recording.
Yeah,
we're recording.
Yeah, I didn't. It is being videotaped, of course, audio taped too. Yeah.
All right.
Before we start, one thing I want to stress with this is that whenever, as far as being a superintendent, start and end times I know has had a history in Edina, but it's something that a decision like this is not just made by a board, it's not just made by the administration, and it's not just made by the community. It really has to be a partnership of all of us working together, and I really hope and that's the spirit I come to this study about. It's an important decision, and it stages the day for a child. At the same time, it really impacts the efficiency of transportation and spending the dollars wisely. So it's really like a combined community event, if you will, community decision. The spirit is to keep everybody engaged in it. So thank you for being here tonight. So I'm going to turn it over to the chair.
All right. Thank you.
When you are called, just come up and grab the microphone. You're welcome to sit down.
And the first person is Brooke Alik. Welcome.
Hi, good evening. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. My name is Brooke Alik. I'm the parent of 2 students at Normandale Elementary. And I'm here wearing 2 hats, one representing the Edina Swim Club and the greater youth sports community that utilizes the middle school facilities, and then the second as a parent in a household where both parents work outside the home. So wearing my first hat, we as the Edina Swim Club utilize Valley View and Southview as 2 of our 3 primary pools. We have over 300 swimmers, the vast majority of whom live in Edina. Over 75 of those swimmers are ages 8 and younger, and we also have many, many in the 9, 10, 11 age range as well. We currently use the pools from about 6 o'clock to 8:30 each night, and under a significantly later middle school start time, we would not be able to access those pools before 7:30 p.m. So we would either not be able to serve as many students in our programs, or we would be asking kindergartners and first graders to be leaving the pools at 9:15, 9:30 at night, which if we're looking at bedtimes and sleep patterns is, probably not an optimal bedtime for the younger end either. I can't speak to sports like basketball and volleyball, but I'm going to assume that they would face similar challenges with their younger students not having access to facilities until much later in the evening. Wearing my hat as a parent of a dual career family, a later middle school start time also poses significant challenges. So right now, with the current schedule, we would be able to put our children on the bus before we left for work. With a 9 or 9:30 start time, we would either be forced to leave them at home unsupervised for a couple of hours, and I can only tell you how many mornings middle schoolers are likely to oversleep or get engrossed in Xbox and miss the bus and have to figure out how they're going to get to school. Or we're going to be having to drop our children at a before school program at the middle school at about the time that they're currently leaving for school, which would then make them unable to take advantage of those later start times and those later sleep times and actually prolong their day significantly. So I know that all ages have pros and cons to the different start times, but I think middle schoolers in particular are a group that may in many cases not be old enough to supervise themselves for a couple of hours in the morning, or who, if we believe they need that extra time to sleep in the morning, may not be getting it in those families where there isn't someone who can stay home with them. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
All right, thank you very much. Next is Stacy Solo. Welcome.
Good evening. I first wanted to say that I appreciate the level of detail I think that I'm seeing this time around in terms of the planning of this whole process. And I'm very encouraged to see, I think, a lot of the holes that at least I personally felt were there in the planning process last time through the planning documents that I've looked at seem to really, the data that we need to collect, I think, is out there. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing what the transportation study says in January. And I appreciate the time that you all are taking to listen proactively now and then later in the process, because I think that'll be really important in gaining the community buy-in for any changes that might occur. So definitely thank you for that. One area that I think, just based on my experience as a Creek Valley parent from the last time around, was just keeping in mind the equity between the elementary schools. And so regardless of how the times shake out in the end, I think that all elementary schools need to be within 2 tiers of each other. I think putting one elementary school, or even half the elementary schools in tier 1 and the other half in tier 3, it just on its face is not going to be equitable, especially as we're looking through all these sleep studies that may have some conflicting or inconclusive results. Putting those kiddos that are in the same grades, potentially nearly 2 hours apart, I think on its face just is inequitable. So as we're looking through this process, I would encourage you to really think about the equity. That was one thing in the planning document that I didn't really see addressed specifically. And then just generally, I think that it's difficult to balance the operational efficiency with what's best for learning. Obviously, that's the huge challenge here. I personally think that getting everybody between 8 and 9 would go a long way to smoothing things over, and I think people would feel pretty good about that. Obviously, that's a challenge, but I think the goal should really be to squeeze those times as much as possible to get as close to that as possible, regardless of whether middle school and elementary school get flipped or some other solution is brought forward. So those would be my general ideas. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Heather English. Welcome.
Thank you. Sorry, I have a little bit of a cold. I'm Heather English. I'm here to represent the Early Learning Center. I'm the PTO president, and I am just going to ask you guys to consider your earliest learners as you make this decision. We provide, by state, we're required to provide transportation to our students needing special education services, which is over 100 students right now, with another 80 or so waiting for evaluation. So that number could greatly increase. Currently, a lot of our transportation is outsourced to Adams Service, I believe. We also provide van transportation to some of our families as well. So consider that as you're making your decision. Also, the start times of elementary schools often impact our adults that go to the early learning center for their parenting along with their preschooler. So when our 9 o'clock classes start, we're arriving at 9:30 after we've gotten our elementary school off, thus missing that important play piece with our children and the opportunity to engage with our teachers and have our turn to learn as well. So that's really all I have to address at this time, and thank you guys for including us in the process.
Thank you. Tara Young.
Hi, thank you.
Welcome.
I have a bit of a cold as well, so please excuse me. I'm here just as a parent. I have a preschooler here at the Early Learning Center that will be a kindergartner at Highlands next year and a current first grader at Highlands as well. I want to say, first of all, that if we decided to have school start at midnight, we would keep going to Highlands because we love it that much. So really, just get that out there first.
There you go.
We can make that a scenario if you'd like.
Yeah, no thanks. I just want to say that in my own household right now, the normal scenario is that we are ready for school and eager to start learning at about 7:15, 7:30 every day. And then we wait another hour and a half for the bus to come, and we wait another half hour after that for school to start. And by the time we sit down to start our day, we've been ready to go for hours and hours and hours. It's not working for us super well right now. My kids go to bed at 7:30, which is, from what I've read, a very appropriate time for that age group, which means when my son gets home at 4:30, 4:40, which is the reality, it's very late, we have very limited family time in the evening, which is our mornings and our evenings right now. It's really rough with the current elementary schedule. Because we're such early risers, I have looked into before school options. My son did run club, which was great for him, but that was a few weeks and it's over. And we looked into swimming lessons at the YMCA. They do not start early enough, so that was another option, no go. I coach the Lego Club. That's going to be starting in January. I looked at, could we meet at the library before school? They don't open till 9, so that's not an option. So, you know, I've been trying to find ways to use that time when we're ready to go. And because we can't get into the school and there's not a lot in the community, it's just kind of wasted time for us. It's hard to say how other people would adjust to a shifted schedule for elementary students. I could say that we have tried to shift sleep times in our house because of the way the current schedule is, and it's been unsuccessful. So I think when people say my kid could never do it, that's a hard thing for me to hear because you really don't know. But I will say that we did try, and it hasn't worked so far. So that's my input. I really hope that we can find a way to at least push the elementary start time a little bit earlier. I'm not saying you need to do a lot, but I hope that we can compromise in a way that meets the needs of a lot of people. So, thank you.
Thank you. Next is Anya for Miranda. Do you have a written proxy?
I have written documentation
Okay,
here.
that's
It's
good.
very hard to read. I'd give it to you, but my handwriting is atrocious.
All right, welcome. Should we?
Because handwriting's not really part of the curriculum any longer. So here's from.
That's a whole other hearing.
She's going to be a really good physician if she chooses that route. So here's her thoughts. She's jumping at the chance to speak about this, but she does volunteer service activity, and what she's doing is tonight. So.
And can I just clarify, did you say your child is 8th grade?
She's
Yeah.
an 8th grader here at South.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
So she says, in school, we are taught to use evidence-based reasoning. We have been given evidence that supports. I'm sorry, yes. In school, we have been taught to use evidence-based reasoning to support our choices and decisions, sorry. We have been given evidence that supports later start times for adolescents for better academic, social, and psychological health and learning. Since school is a place of learning, we should start later. While we're teaching students evidence-based reasoning, the board should use it to inform their decisions, making start times later for middle and high school students.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.
Matt Ambrose. Welcome.
Thank you very much for hosting this tonight. Is this the right one? Hi. So I also am kind of wearing two hats or playing two roles tonight. My first is a professional role as a pediatrician. I think there's a strong body of evidence, including a strong statement from the American Academy of Pediatrics that supports the delayed school start times in adolescents starting around the onset of puberty, because their sleep cycles shift back by up to 2 hours. And based on recommendations for 8.5 to 9.5 hours of sleep and the typical sleep time of 11 to midnight for a teenager, or for a tweenager and a teenager, a later start time would be more in keeping with that formal recommendation. And the potential benefits from less chronic sleep loss in adolescents include decreased pediatric obesity, decreased rates of depression, improved school performance, increased standardized test scoring, et cetera. So I think there's a strong body of scientific evidence to support those later start times for the older children. The second role that I wear is as a parent. I have a first grader here at Normandale who also is awake and ready to go at 5:45 a.m. Chronically, and similarly goes to sleep at an early time. And later start times would be a significant challenge for us to participate as a family. I'm in a two-parent working family, but also would be quite disruptive for our going to sleep as well as awakening. So I urge you to consider the body of evidence behind school start times in your decision making. Thank you for hosting this.
Thank you. Brian Bass. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I have two roles. The first role is a parent. I have a Creek Valley second grader and a 7th grade student at Valley View Middle School. We have great appreciation for the staff at both campuses and have really had a wonderful experience. My elementary student certainly matches what the previous two folks have said in terms of 7:15. She's ready to go. She's ready to learn. She's reading. She's exploring. Her mind is awake. And so for us, the earlier start time for elementary is something that we would really be looking forward to for our elementary age student. Our middle schooler is classic in alignment with the research. She literally, when we tuck her in at night and we say our prayers and we process the day, I mean that can go. We can start at 8:45 and that can go until 9:45. Her brain is still going, and as much as we try to have her asleep by 9, it's just, I mean, so, and 8 o'clock is probably like the beginning of what would be an appropriate time for her. I mean, in terms of her specific, the way it's manifesting, her puberty is manifesting itself in terms of what her brain is doing now. So, I'm also an educational professional. I am a pre-K through 8th grade principal in St. Paul Public Schools. We did just go through the whole school start times process, and a process that tried to be as transparent as you all are trying to be transparent and have as much community input from as many stakeholders as possible. So you're certainly, I applaud your effort at that process, regardless of the circumstances surrounding the last attempt. But one of the things that we are doing that I thought was a really genius idea of our superintendent was to really make sure that we gave people plenty of time, that once the decision was made and we shifted times to reflect the research and honor the research, as was spoken before, to give folks plenty of time. And in our case, he gave over a school year, a full school year for families to make those adjustments and to make those changes as families are committed to many different activities, especially here in Edina. I mean, we have so many families accessing so many different things in the evenings, and so that would be a pretty incredible thing to have to wrestle with and grapple with. If it's, I mean, if it's going to happen on March 19th, I think was when the vote would happen. I'm not sure that there's a whole lot of time there if that was going to start in the fall. So I would invite you to consider, you know, how far out it should be before it starts. So, and I'm excited that we're back at the table and we're continuing to fight to get this right. And I really hope, even if it doesn't work for my current middle schooler, that there is hope for the second one coming along. So, thank you.
Thank you. So those are the only people that signed up. Are there other people that would like to speak, and we could kind of go in a, come on up? Yes, sorry. So when, Jill Dietering.
Hi,
Welcome.
I'm Jill Dietering, and I have a kindergartner at Countryside and a third grader at Countryside. And I mean, I think in the end, we're not going to be able to please everybody, including my own household. I did a little informal poll at my house tonight at dinner, and my third grader wants a 7:45 start and thinks everybody should have a flashlight and require everybody in Edina to leave a light on for everyone. And my kindergartner requested that he gets more sleep when he woke up at 8:10 today. So I just asked that the decision be research-based. I really feel like the data lacked last year for the K through 2 crowd. I think it was there for 3 through 5, but that's my concern with my younger one being the one who is a sleeping-in child, that I just want to see data to support the decision. I'm also concerned about it being drastic, going from 9:25 until 7:45. I mean, that seems like an extreme change. I also would like you to consider evening activities, so if that's something that you feel is important. My daughter is on a swim team, and the practices are later, so we may have to make a decision that we quit those activities in order for her to get to school. I personally feel like school is more important than activities, but I also feel like having a well-rounded child is important also. So just please take that into consideration. And then as a side note, if school does stay at the later start time, as a working parent, sometimes my kids need to be to school 15 minutes before school starts. And if there could be a prorated childcare, it's hard to think to pay the full, I don't know if it's 2 or 3 hour amount just for 15 minutes of care. So if that could be taken into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. We're now taking volunteers who would like to come up and speak. Andrea, are you? Not that I know who you are. Angela, sorry.
Okay. Does someone want this?
Yes, please.
Good evening. My name is Angela McGarvey, and I wasn't planning on speaking, but I spoke at the last one, so I'm just going to kind of, I was just kind of sitting back taking notes. So I probably am unique because I have kids at all different schools. So I have a second grader at Creek Valley, I have a 7th grader at Valley View, a 9th grader at the high school, and a junior at the high school. So I kind of span all different start times. I'm 7:45 to 9:25, doesn't bother me at all. But one of just the few things that I would really encourage you to all look at, and first of all, I appreciate that you are taking another look, is I think I'm echoing possibly Stacy's sentiments, saying that we cannot silo the schools. We are a community, and we've got to think about all of these learners. We just cannot put them in different silos. It's completely inequitable and just not the right way to support our community. I'd like us to be very thoughtful about the process and keep all learners in mind. I do not think that we should make a decision based on a specific sporting group. It's just not the way to do it. It just wouldn't be fair. You've got hockey players, you got basketball, you got swimming, all different kids in all different activities. You've got kids in choir, kids in band. We just can't make the decision based on one specific group. And I also want to point out that not all learners are up at 6 a.m. They're not. That's just simply not true. Some of these families, that might be the case. For my family, that's not the case. None of my young elementary students were up ready to go at 7:30 in the morning. So not all kids are like that. And of course, I know it depends on the family dynamics. The younger kids don't have a lot going on, and then all of a sudden 3rd, 4th, 5th grade hits, and they do have stuff going on, so they tend to sleep in a little bit later. And then in closing, I guess the most important piece is the safety piece for me. Number one, above all else, is the safety piece, and making sure that all kids are safe and depending on when we have start times, the traffic that you need to consider around the west side of Edina with Edina High School and Valley View Middle School and Creek Valley. So safety would be number one for me with the things, you know, with daylight savings and buses and student drivers. And then I just want to say that I do support other people saying that we should really look at the data and make sure that the data does support the final decision. I know it will be tough to balance all of us, but somehow if we can rely on the data, I think that would be the best way to go about it in the most efficient way. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to speak? All right. Yes, yes, if you can now take another 3 minutes if you wish.
And sir, did you say that you were a principal?
Yes.
At an elementary or?
Pre-K through 8, dual
Pre-K
campus
through 8,
in
okay.
St. Paul, yep. So again, Dr. Brian Bass. You know, the after-school implications, I think, are interesting and unique and varied. However, the current system is flawed. The current system has kids out of practices, out of gyms at 9 and 9:30. So I'm hearing some folks express that there are implications to if we have an earlier start time or a later start time that we won't have access or whatever. We're struggling to have access now. And, you know, my 7th grader, whose brain doesn't shut off until 10 or 10:30, she's at practice, right, until 9 or 9:30 for Edina Basketball Association right now. And so by the time she gets home, showers, and, you know, does her, whatever, her nighttime routine, I mean, it's 10:30, 11 o'clock, right? And if that's 1 or 2 nights a week, that's currently flawed. So I think there needs to be some balanced perspectives around how we're looking at the after-school pieces and making sure that the academic piece is first and foremost at front and center in terms of this decision. I'm trying to think if there was anything else related to the after-school piece. The other thing that I just would offer as a person of color living in Edina, that the current system advantages certain students, the school start times, and it disadvantages other students. And so, for example, if you're a student who's riding in from Minneapolis, or if you're coming from another district, because you are trying to invest in education and make sure that you get access to a high-quality education. If you're on that school bus for middle school at 5:30, 5:40 to get here, I mean, is that really fair by the time they get to school and they're starting their day that they've, I mean, so I don't know if I'm articulating that well or not, but I think the point here is that we have an opportunity to be in better alignment with the research, and certainly there's going to be some hurdles that are going to have to be adjusted and adapt, and we're going to have to adapt as a community, but we're a great community, and we're capable of adjusting and adapting and making this work for all. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Again, any other individuals that would like to? Yes, sir. Welcome. If you could give us your name, please.
Hi. Which, this one?
Either one.
Either one. Okay. I am Albert Sy. I'm a parent here in Edina, and I have a 5th grader at Cornelia and a 7th grader at Southview. And I wasn't planning on saying anything, but I guess I think we all would acknowledge this is an extremely complex issue with, by my count, probably at least 6 or 7 different factors, major factors at play. And like somebody else said, I don't think we're going to please everybody for certain. I think we all understand that. And my request is for, I don't know if you call it transparency, but for very strong communication to the community about what those factors are that are being considered, and a clear way, if it's through the web or through these forums, to be able to somehow clearly articulate what the issues are for whether it's transportation, whether it's the research about start times and performance and whatever those might be, because it's just really hard to keep track of it, and we all come with our own narrow perspective from our own whether it's from our sports teams or from our kids or whatever it might be. So I guess the bottom line for me is to be very thoughtful about communicating what those factors are, because at the end of all of this, I think a lot of people will hopefully be more understanding if they have a better better understanding of what was considered into the final decisions, whether they're going to be happy with them or not. You know, it's going to matter a lot more. That's going to be a better result if we understand what are the issues. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? So, if you have comments, or if you know people and anybody who's watching this video, any comments, you just send an email just to the school. I would love to say send it to Regina, but just send an email to the Edina School Board. It will go to every one of us, and we do read all the emails. And so if you forgot to say something tonight, send us a follow-up email. If you know somebody who couldn't attend, follow-up email, all of which will be part of the process. And I think that's it. Thank you very much.